Hi, students. I'm here today to just talk about molecular biology. Over the last couple of weeks, you guys have had an opportunity to work in discovery education. You've had some articles that you've read with questions that you've answered. So, I want to touch base on a couple of things to make sure that we fully understand what photosynthesis is and what cellular respiration is. As you can tell on the bottom of the screen, you are going to write your notes on page 57 of your notebook. For those of you that are keeping up with this, thank you very much. There's also further information on this assignment in Canvas as to what page you should be on and where you're writing this information in your notebook. This is also a layout as to how I would like these to be written. Also, a couple of things to remember. Make sure you're putting the heading of the slide so you can keep it organized. Also, paraphrase where appropriate. Don't write every single little thing. Definitely pay attention to things that I have bolded as well as italicized. And then also sketch pictures where appropriate. And I'll point those out as I go through the slides with you. So today's objective is that we're going to summarize how food provides the energy and the molecules required for building materials, growth, and survival of all organisms. So when we're talking about organisms, we're talking about humans and plants and squirrels and fish, butterflies, insects. We are talking about all organisms. If you think back to our biological classification, all of those kingdoms that we referenced and talked about in that triangle, that is what we are talking about. So, a couple of things to be mindful of. Before we left, we talked about, or you had an opportunity to look at macromolecules and then also think about the characteristics of living things. I would definitely refer back to my notes if you have no clue what I'm talking about. So, keep in mind that food is simply fuel that we need to survive. And we're going to get our food in the form of three major categories. It's going to be your proteins, which are your meats. It's going to be your carbohydrates, your lipids, and your fats. Nucleic acids is also a four. It's the fourth macromolecule, but it's kind of a given. So if I eat a strawberry, that strawberry has strawberry cells, and in those strawberry cells, they have a nucleus. So that nucleus is going to be something, of course, I eat in every living thing, or so that's kind of a given. So I'm going to eat that regardless. Whereas if I eat a steak, that's going to be completely structurally different than if I eat a biscuit. So how do animals get their food or fuel? Well, all animals get their food from other living things. So that's the things that we eat. So if you look at the picture, you have chicken breast, you have almonds, you have what looks like some kind of peas, you have eggs, you have fruits and vegetables, milk, yogurt. Um, you eat those things. Other organisms eat those things as well. So if I'm a fox and there's some chickens running around, I'm going to eat a chicken. Now, of course, it's not cooked, but all living things have to eat other living things. So whether it is a herbivore or a carnivore or an omnivore, they're going to eat other living things, and that's just how animals are going to get their food, aka fuel. Well, after we decided what we're going to eat, so for instance, on the one of the first slides I showed you, it had a big, nice, juicy looking hamburger. Well, if I eat that hamburger, I'm going to, of course, put it in my mouth. I'm going to chew it up, break it up into smaller pieces. The enzymes and acids in my mouth are going to continue to break that down. I'm going to swallow it. It's going to go down the esophagus into the stomach. In the stomach, the digestion process is going to continue. Those stomach acids are going to break down that food into smaller and smaller particles. So we're going to break it down to the molecular structure. So let's say that bun on that hamburger, it's going to get broken down into starches and sugars. That meat is also going to get turned into a form of sugar as well, because the body can't recognize a cheeseburger. So I can't say, here cells, here's a cheeseburger. It has to be broken down into an actual form of energy that the cells can use. So the goal of eating food is that whatever I eat, it's going to get broken down into glucose. And glucose is what's needed to make a usable form of energy for our cells. Well, if animals get their fuel by eating food or other living things, plants have to actually make their own food. They don't have the luxury of eating something else. So plants are going to make their own food through a process called photosynthesis. So through this process of photosynthesis, they are going to have glucose. So glucose is the only food source that plants actually have to use to run those processes within the plant. So photosynthesis is going to be, of course, used by plants. It's going to be used by algae. It's going to be used by certain types of bacteria. But for the most part, when we think of photosynthesis, we're going to think about plants. Well, in order for photosynthesis to happen, there's a couple of things that you are familiar with that it needs. So plants need carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide can come from uh, the burning of fossil fuels. It can also come from the byproduct that we actually exhale out. So we inhale air, which is that mixture of nitrogen, oxygen, and those trace gases. And then we're going to exhale as a waste product carbon dioxide. Water is going to come from rain. And then we mix all this with light. So that chemical reaction that happens, and it produces sugar and oxygen. Hopefully, you guys know that when we talk about oxygen, that is the byproduct of photosynthesis. So not only does photosynthesis make sugar, it also produces oxygen, which plants give off and mixes with that air that we need to breathe. So humans, animals are going to produce the carbon dioxide that plants need. And then in return, plants are going to produce through photosynthesis oxygen that we need. As it produces oxygen, it also, keep in mind, produces the sugar right here. And this is the glucose that now plants need to run their cellular processes. On this slide here, I would highly recommend that you would draw and sketch out this picture in detail. I wouldn't even bother writing down steps 1 through 6 if you choose to do so. That's fine. But I would definitely make sure that I copy down this picture because this clearly illustrates what photosynthesis is. Sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water go into the plant, and then oxygen and sugars are going to be produced. Now, keep in mind on this picture, for sugars, that sugar actually stays inside the plant. It doesn't leave the plant. The only thing that's going to leave is oxygen. Keep in mind that when we talk about where does this happen in the plant, this is going to happen within the chloroplast. And the chloroplasts are going to be filled with chlorophyll, which allows this process to happen within the leaves or the green portions of the plant. Well, what do plants and animals do when they get this food or fuel? So now the ultimate goal is for plants and animals to get glucose. So glucose is actually what is needed to make adenosine triphosphate, ATP, which is the energy that cells can actually use. So we know that cells, whether it's plant or animal, they have particular organelles that carry out highly specialized jobs within the cell. So for instance, we know that plant and both animal cells have a nucleus. The nucleus is the control center. It is the brain of the cell. So this is what tells the cell organelles and function as to how should it function, what should it look, what should it do, what is its job. Another important organelle within both plant and animal cells is the mitochondria. So the mighty mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So this is where all of that glucose gets changed over into this ATP, this usable form of energy for the cell. Now, this is one of the biggest misconceptions that I'm seeing across the board. Cellular respiration has to happen in all living things. So photosynthesis is the process by which plants get food. Eating other organisms is the process by which animals get food. because each plants and animals have to get glucose. So plants just use photosynthesis to get glucose. We just eat other things to get our glucose. So once both plants and animals have gotten their glucose, they are able to now go through what's known as cellular respiration, which allows the plant to use glucose and change it over to ATP. So what is cellular respiration? It's the process in which sugars, glucose, are converted into usable energy. This happens in the mitochondria of all living things. So all living things have a mitochondria. The ATPs leave the mitochondria and deliver their captured energy to places in the cell where it is needed to power cellular activity. So think about all the things that we've talked about that your body has to do. So this is where you get the energy to do that. So that hamburger that I ate is broken all down, it's going, it's changed into glucose. My body is now going to use that glucose and change it over into a usable form of energy. So I have my glucose. Remember, we're breathing. Plants, of course, have access to oxygen. Mix those together, and then I get carbon dioxide, which is a byproduct. We give off carbon dioxide. Water is also a byproduct. We get rid of that through the urinary tract or excretory system. And then we have what's left over is energy. That is what we ultimately want. So that ATP is then sent out into the cell to run those functions that it needs to run. So a couple of key points, and I know I went through that pretty quickly, but a couple of key points that I want you to definitely take away from this is that humans and animals eat food. That is how we get our glucose. Plants have to make glucose through photosynthesis. Glucose is needed to make usable energy for all organisms known as ATP through cellular respiration. So the ultimate goal of eating and the ultimate goal of photosynthesis is to make glucose. Glucose is that much needed sugar in order to make cellular respiration happen. So of course, you guys have already read about this. You've watched videos about this. You've worked through activities on Discovery Education about this. Now, I will say, if you're completely lost on this topic, please make sure that you have thoroughly looked at those activities and that we just didn't rush through them. And of course, now you've written your notes and you can reread them. Always, you can email me questions. If you need to have a Zoom meeting, you can get in touch with me for a Zoom meeting. So just email me and let me know if you still have questions about this. On our last slide, a couple of things. So after you've completed your notes for today, you are going to complete a practice quiz. And you know kind of the rundown as to how we do our practice quizzes. So you're going to go to quizzes, joinmyquiz.com. Your code is 388921. You're going to practice through those questions. Once you feel ready, you're going to go to Canvas and click the link Distant Learning Quiz 1 Cellular Respiration. So you will have a quiz on this information and it is graded. Also, for a grade for today, you are going to upload pictures of your notes into Canvas. So you're simply going to take a picture with your Chromebook, or if you want to take a picture with your phone and upload it to your Google Drive, you are going to upload your picture in Canvas. Do not email me a picture of your work. Upload it in Canvas so you can get credit for your notes and then your distance learning quiz for today. If you have any questions about anything, of course, email me to get clarification. So if you're not sure, don't do it and do it wrong. Simply ask me questions first so I can help you so we can get the best grade out of our work and everything is submitted. All right, so I hope that this PowerPoint was helpful and that you clarify some of the ideals if you were having trouble with photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So bye, and I will see you guys in a couple of days.